Hello, and we are live. Wait, that's the wrong banner. I didn't do that. I did introduction. What the hell? Okay, there we go. That's better.
No.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our live show where we're going to be discussing She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This beautiful book. We've got two different covers featured today. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Yes, so this was our August book of the month. We'll start with a little bit of an introduction, what we each thought of the book, a star rating if you want to do that, and then we'll dive into a little more spoiler-free thoughts, and then later on our spoiler-free thoughts. But we'll give you a heads up before we get into that. But for those tuning in, let us know what you rated the book as well. What you think? Did you love it? Did you not? Tell us the dates. But yeah, let's go around the room and share what we thought. Els, do you want to start?
Sure. I have a lot of thoughts. I wrote several notes, and
Lovely.
I have tabs, which you can't really see. Got a lot
The
of tabs.
itty bitty tabs.
Itty bitty tabs, which I'm trying to use sparingly because I can't go out and buy new ones right now, and I can't order them online. It's fine. I think for me, it's a 3-star read. It's a positive 3-star read, not a negative 3-star read. But I do have a lot of in-depth thoughts that we'll get to.
Lovely. Rochelle.
I finished this yesterday, and I'm kind of sitting at like a 3.5, 4-star area. I really enjoyed the main protagonist and a lot of the themes in the book in regards to gender identity and women's bodily autonomy. But yeah, there was maybe subconsciously to the detriment of the current book, there was a lot of me comparing it to The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang.
Oh,
maybe
she cut out.
Unfairly judged in my brain. But yeah.
So has anyone else read The Poppy War as well?
Yes.
Yeah, I've read it.
Okay, I have not.
Okay. Cool.
The Poppy War is a high standard to live up to.
It's also,
I feel
the
like
Poppy War's,
yeah.
It's also like a good 200 pages longer, I think. It's quite, there is a lot more space for it. Anyway, so regarding this book, I gave it a 4. I finished it yesterday. Like, I didn't finish it in time for our meet. I had like 50 pages to go. And everyone's like, oh my God, the last 50 pages are insane. I was like, yeah, you're right. So, like, I think, like, for me, like, I loved the characters. I really love Shelley's, like, style of writing. I think the style is really beautiful. Like, she's definitely very good at, like, pulling together some really beautiful, like, parts and scenes in the book. She's really good at creating very emotive and really, like just beautiful, I don't know what I'm saying, beautiful scenes. And I loved, like, that it's, like, it was Chinese military history based, and also, like what you said, Rochelle, like exploring gender identity and sexuality in a very, like, interesting way. It's very nuanced, and I really like the way that she did it for both of our protagonists. But we'll get into that later on.
Yes. I think I'm at about a 3.75. That feels right. A little bit more than the 3.5, but not quite a 4. And I feel like I agree with a lot of what everyone's been saying. Again, also really enjoyed the writing style and how much emotion she was able to put into it. Especially some of, like, the really hard scenes, like particularly towards the start of the book as well, and some of the moments at the very end. There was just a lot of really intense things going on, and I felt like I was feeling those things as well. Very, very interesting characters. They're not necessarily, I wouldn't say any of them are, like, particularly likable. Like, the main characters, maybe Ma. I love Ma, but they're very
Ma.
bless
Love
her. But yeah, it was the two kind of main protagonists that we follow. Protagonists?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep. They're very interesting. Really, really enjoyed kind of learning a bit more about their history and the way that they think and their motivations. And even though they do some interesting things, make some interesting choices, I was still very invested.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
yeah, where do we want to begin?
From the beginning. Actually,
Start from the beginning.
something that I wanted to bring up is like, I don't know, like, I mean, it's not really spoilery because it's kind of suggested in the blurb, but something that I really liked from the very beginning, like the first chapter is so strong, like it's a brilliant first chapter. And what I really like about it is that Zhu, like who, the girl who takes on her brother's name, her name is never mentioned. You never actually know what her name is.
Mhm.
So the entire book, you just know her as Zhu. And I really liked that. I thought that was really clever because I thought to myself maybe halfway through when there was a moment about when Zhu was talking, like thinking about like the past and like what had happened with her family. I thought to myself, what was her previous name? So I went to back to the beginning and I was like, well, it's never mentioned.
Yeah.
I thought that was really clever.
She's only ever referred to as like a useless girl or girl.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I thought that was just so clever. Like I just thought that was really fun.
Definitely a powerful decision, since the whole book is very much about like focused on Zhu's identity and what she perceives her identity as, and fate taking on
plays such
someone
a
else's
huge
fate.
Yeah, fate plays such a huge part in this book, especially because she's like, I think like in a way, like fate, the way it's like portrayed in this, it's like it's something that you can just take, like that, like it's something you can take, but it's something you can't escape. Like it's kind of like, oh, I don't know how to like describe it without sounding like a complete moron. But
yeah, it was kind of like, I think there was a point where she was like, I don't have to accept my fate. I can take someone else's if I believe and have like enough willpower to do it. Like you have to want it enough. So that, some sense of autonomy there rather than just going with the flow with the fate that has been handed to you type thing. Exactly. I was very intrigued as well. It got to like a quarter of the way through the book and I was like, I'm very curious to see where this is going, because like everything that's in the blurb happens in less than the first chapter, like the first part of the first chapter. Like everything that is laid out in the blurb happens really quickly, and I was like, wonder where this is going to go. So it was nice to go into a book where I feel like there weren't a whole lot of details fed to you really early on, because there's some blurbs out there that inadvertently spoil things that I probably wouldn't have wanted to know going into it. So
and then when you read it, you're like, oh yeah, no, I kind of got most of that from the blurb. I agree, because it definitely, like, I think once you get to like maybe after like two or three chapters, you're like, I have no idea where this is going. Genuinely couldn't tell you where it's going.
Yeah, exactly. This would be a great book for the HSC belonging topic. Aussie schools are still flogging that dead horse.
Stop it, Maddie.
Not wrong.
No, not wrong. Not wrong.
But very much so, because with Zhu and Ouyang as well, both of them are kind of outsiders and trying to find their place in society, or pretending to be something that they're not in order to obtain their objectives and get what they want.
Yeah, and it's interesting because something that I thought was that their objectives are not, their goals are not clear for most of it. Zhu takes her brother's fate, and his fate is greatness, right? And I'm like, what is that? What does that mean? And for most of the book, I'm like, as things are unfolding for both Ouyang and Zhu, I'm thinking to myself, like, how are these actions, like, where are they going? like what is it all going to add up to? What are their goals in the end? And I think it kind of confused me a little bit. It did confuse, but I'm also just like, maybe that's the whole point. Maybe we're not meant to know. We're not meant to know anything until the very end when things are revealed, obviously. But I just felt a little bit lost for some of it.
Yes.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the problems I had as well. Like, just feeling like I've lost track of like one thread in the tapestry, and like it doesn't make as much sense because I haven't. So I had to go back and reread a lot and pick up where I left off and try and figure out what had happened.
A big thing that I struggled with, just because I mean it's a hard book to get into. Just objectively, I think we all really struggled with getting into that, and I know that I personally have been in a weird headspace for reading just because of everything that's going on, and so I struggled a bit more because of that. But the big thing that threw me off was that I didn't expect the split perspectives and the fact that there were so many different character perspectives that we went into. And I like that in a book. I like that we saw so many different sides of the same story. But someone yesterday in our Sydney meet brought up the question, would you have preferred it if it had been sorted by perspective rather than by time period? And like I've sort of been reflecting on that, and I think yes, I would have. Even if I'd had to sort of sort out the timeline in my head a little bit, it would have been easier if I'd been aware going into each chapter. This is Chu, this is Oyang, this is whatever. So that definitely threw me. And there was one thing, I don't know if we can say it as a spoiler. It's probably not a spoiler. It took me a really long time to realize that Chu and Oyang are on opposite sides of the same war.
I think Maddie had the same problem.
Yeah.
She was like,
Maddie caught on.
What do you mean?
Maddie caught on faster than me. I will say it took me a very long time to realize this, and this is, I think, a reflection on me and not on the book itself. But the way it was arranged didn't really help.
No, I understand. Yeah. I mean, I figured out pretty early, but I think that I don't know, picked it up pretty quick.
Well, because I think as soon as the kind of new perspective was introduced, well, not as soon as it was introduced, but when they're kind of years after first meeting and they're in those kind of different war camps, I was like, wait, okay, where exactly are they both? And I had to, like, I questioned as soon as it popped up. I was like, wait, where is this? Is it the same camp? Is it not? But yeah, I mean, this is another thing that came up yesterday as well. It's like it's the writing style as well is vague in some ways, can be kind of ambiguous at some points. So perhaps it also might have lended to it as well. And I did still really enjoy the writing style, but there were a couple of moments where I had to reread what I just read, or it was, open-ended enough that you could interpret it a couple of ways.
It's pretty much as soon as I finished it, I went, okay, I need to read this again. I'm going to give myself some time because I have some other things to read, but I really want to reread it because I feel like I'm going to pick up just as much in a second read than I did in the first one, because there's just so much detail, so much density, and I mean, I personally love that in a book. I love that it requires a reread. I'll have to report back and see if my rating changes after I read.
Yeah.
I do think this book warrants a reread, just because I feel like not only is the story like dense, it's dense. Like there's so much that happens. There's so many time jumps, and there's so many like details that I feel like I may have missed, because there were moments where I got a bit confused. I was like, wait, why did this suddenly happen? Like, I don't understand what triggered this. So I have to go back and reread it and be like, oh, but I don't understand what caused it. So
I'm very curious to see where it will kind of go in the sequel, because I think it's a duology. So I'm very curious to see what kind of happens next. And I think I will probably reread it before reading the second book whenever that one comes out. But especially with Zhu, I wonder where that storyline's going to go. For sure.
For sure.
Do you all plan on picking up the second one as well?
Yeah, no, I'll definitely pick pick it up.
I think also if
Yeah.
she doesn't write a sequel as well and writes something completely different, I'm going to pick that up as well, because it's like we've all been saying, the writing itself was very engaging and very easy, very easy. Like, it's the content that we're struggling with, just because it's a lot to take in. But
Yeah.
I did love the way this was written, so I would really like to see something else from
Yeah,
Parker Chan.
absolutely.
Yeah.
No.
One of the things I struggled with is I listened to most of it on audiobook. And I know that like the names was definitely something that it was very difficult for me to keep track of. And it might just be because like a lot of Chinese, Southeastern Asian languages are very tonal, like changing the tone
very
on a
tonal.
vowel changes the entire meaning of the word. And I'm like not used to listening out for that. But yeah, like I kept being like, okay, this city is said very similar to this completely separate city. Is it the same city? Is it separate cities? And I got very confused based on that. But I think it may just be like the difference in that I'm not used to listening to a tonal language as much as I am just like normal Eastern European nonsense.
Our English nonsense, yes.
Yeah, I did not misspeak. Our language is nonsense.
Absolutely. We're at least used to this nonsense.
We're used to this nonsense. I was interested to find out that it was inspired by this, like the crusade that started the Ming Dynasty. So a lot of this is like actually historically based. I'm like, oh, interesting. That is not something that I would have picked up on.
No, there was a historical note apparently in the book.
Yeah,
but
it's
like
not
in the US version, it's not in it.
It's
it's
not in this one.
No, so I had to ask else.
Sorry, it's in this one. Yeah, I took a picture and put it in the group chat. And now everyone's read it.
I missed that message, so I have to go back and read that.
I can just send it to you directly if you want.
Yeah, but like the historical note like really puts a lot of things into perspective and context. Like that you probably unless you are well versed in that part of history, you wouldn't have really known.
Yeah. Definitely, I think helpful for a lot of readers going into it by the sound of it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to think.
I'm just trying to think of what we could say that's like still non-spoiler.
Yes, I was going to say the exact same thing before we dive into
halfway through the book. So I went into this one. Sophia picked this one for us this month, and I must have been busy at the time or something, because I just went, yeah, I trust you. I'll read whatever you tell me to. Just how the friendship works. And so I went into it not having read the synopsis, not having learned anything. Halfway through, I was like, oh, I'll read the author bio. Didn't realize she was Australian, first of all. But also, it says in the bio at the front of my copy, it says, after a failed search to find English language book versions of the stories in epic East Asian historical TV dramas, she decided to write her own. And I love that, first of all. Secondly, I asked her on Twitter to give us a recommendation list for some dramas, and she did this morning.
Yeah,
amazing!
So, she responded. We appreciate it.
And I love her very much for it, because I watch a lot of Asian dramas, but all of the epic ones I've watched have been made post 2015. So I will retweet that to the Name of the Book Twitter account as well.
Brilliant.
So that other people can see it if they want to watch the dramas that potentially inspired this, or just because when another person in our Sydney group also watches a lot of these Chinese, it's called wuxia dramas. She watches a lot of these, and one of the comments she made was, it felt like she should be watching this book, not necessarily reading it.
This would be great if it was adapted.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things I love about wuxia dramas and shagok dramas is the costumes And I did
Oh,
miss
yeah.
that I couldn't see any beautiful costumes in this, but I also
Yeah.
really understand the sentiment. Like the book itself, it has such a big cast, it has so many complex things happening over such a long period of time. It would have been a lot easier if it had been a series. Netflix.
I would absolutely enjoy watching this.
Netflix,
For sure.
please pick it up.
Yeah. And I mean, that is quite fun in a book. I think reading it and going, I could very easily watch this.
Mm-hmm.
I struggled to picture some things, I think, but I quite liked when that comment came up yesterday, and like knowing that the author was inspired by dramas. I thought that was quite lovely, actually, that inspiration has clearly come through in the end product, even though the end product is not a carbon copy of the things that inspired her.
Another thing, like the descriptions of food in this book kill me. I was so hungry every time I was reading it. She was just like, "Ooh, these tiny little cake pastries," and I'm like, "I want pastry."
Oh yeah, I ate so much food after this book. Like, I need food. I made dumplings, and I was like, "This is as close as I'll get to anything right now."
Oh, I want dumplings so bad.
Yeah, actually, something that was also brought up was, I think Whitney brought it up, was that like Shelley has a really like great way of writing, like you can feel like in the first chapter, like you can feel the characters are starving. Like you just like there are just so many moments where, like, you can just really strongly feel what they're feeling, and I think that is her credit and her writing ability, because that was really well done, and it really helped me connect with Chu and Ouyang. It really helped me connect with the two of them during those moments.
No, I agree. Really strong atmosphere. And I think because that's such, like, especially for Zhu, such a like pivotal, important moment that's affected every other decision she's made in the rest of her life. So I really appreciated how like vivid and raw that first chapter was, because you can just really understand where she's come from and why she's doing a lot of the things that she's doing later on. Because so much of what she's done, especially in the first kind of half of the book, was like a survival response rather than seeking something else, which I thought was really interesting. And I feel like probably why her motives were quite vague for a large portion of the book as well, because it was, rather than her seeking something, it was her responding to
stimuli,
danger or whatever has been thrown her way.
There was a lot of like on the fly thinking from her, rather than like active planning to do things. Which I think was potentially like caused some confusion.
I was like,
I
was like,
I really,
the bit when, sorry.
I'm not going to go into details just yet, but like at the monastery,
there were some choices that she made.
I was surprised. It was much more dramatic than I was expecting, and I really enjoyed it. Like, I really enjoyed those chapters of her time at the monastery. We can go into a little more detail in the spoiler section, but
she did surprise me a lot with the things, that the way that her mind worked, and the way that she would just kind of like just do things not on a whim necessarily. She'll think it out, but very, very quickly, and just do it. And not like,
she's tossing up between a couple of very questionable ideas, and I'm like, oh, which one's it gonna be?
Which one?
Exactly. Is there anything else that we wanted to chat about before diving into spoilers? Any kind of characters that we want to mention in particular that people might be intrigued by?
I really wish there was a character list, just a list somewhere in the book, because I was losing track because there were so many, but a lot of them were very, very vivid. Like the important ones were very, very vivid.
Yeah, especially since like having various different perspectives. You'll meet a character in a really intimate setting and then see them in a different from a different person's perspective who's not quite as close to them. So obviously they refer to them by a different name or a different station. So sometimes it would take me a little while to piece together who was who. So I feel like having a character list just would have made that a little more seamless for me to pick up, I think. Especially in these large scale like fantasy novels where there's a lot of politics and a lot of the military stuff, because I don't know a lot about politics in the military, so just having things like laid out cleanly, so I'm like, okay, I can, just a little quicker for me to pick up, I think.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find the name of Chu's like best friend from the monastery. Like what was Sudar? Oh, loved him. Iconic. I want a whole book on him.
Yeah, I want him to get his own book.
I kind of want, I want his story about what happened between the 2 points in their lives where they diverge and then come back. I would love him. Back. Yeah.
Just give me, Shelley, just give me a novella of that time and I would be very happy.
Yeah, because he's a fascinating, it was a lively character, a lot of life in him. A lot of love to give.
Not destined for a monkage. No. Boy should not have been a monk. No.
Like I'm curious about. I don't think we get a lot of detail about where like his history in the lead up to joining the monastery, do we? Yeah, so I'd be curious about what happened there.
Definitely the comedic relief, though.
A joy.
Worried it was going to be too much political intrigue to keep up with, but I think it was a perfect amount. Yeah, I agree. I don't think it was too overwhelming. I think some of it's still quite dense, but it wasn't. Yeah, it definitely wasn't too much for me either. I don't think.
It wasn't too much of that, and there weren't too many like long battle scenes. If anything, the battles and the warfare are very short. Like they pretty much like just condenses it all into like 2 paragraphs, and you're like, oh, okay, so you know what happened, you know the outcome, and it's what she reflects on more is the consequences after each moment of warfare.
Yeah, because there were a few scenes obviously where they're talking strategy and planning out what they're going to do and respond, like, and how they think the opposition's going to respond, but it wasn't like really long and lengthy, and I'm like, I don't understand what you're talking about. So yeah, I think it was a good balance.
Yeah. And like comparatively something like a Game of Thrones where they have to like walk you through step by step how that plan came to fruition, you can kind of like pick up the threads and connect the dots yourself, which is like more the style that I prefer.
Agreed. All right, I think we might start delving into some spoilery discussions now. So if you have not read the book and you don't want to have any details spoiled, that now's probably the time to exit and come back after you've read the book. All right, where do we want to begin?
There's so much.
I know. I'm like, where's a good place to start?
I think a good place to start would be to talk about the parallels between Ouyang and Chu.
Mm-hmm.
I know Sophia wanted to talk about the gender stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you can start.
Stuff. Empty.
Gender stuff.
Gender. We've got 5 hours, right?
Yeah, no, I thought it was really interesting because Chu throughout the whole, like from the very beginning, I don't think that she identifies predominantly as female. And there's like a lot of like moments where like, especially between Chu and Ouyang, where it's like they both don't fit within a certain category of what everyone else perceives. Like they're neither male nor female and they don't fit into society. And what I really liked with their parallels was like, in a way, I don't know if it's like one owns it more than the other. I think they both struggle with it a lot and they both came from very different places. But someone else pick up because I don't know what I'm going to say.
One of the really interesting things for me about both of them is, well, for one thing, when Chu goes, I'm not a woman, I'm not a woman, it's all reactionary, and they're not saying I am not a woman, I am this. It's just I am not that. I cannot be that for my own sake. Whereas Ouyang again doesn't have a box to slot into, but is very insistent on what he's not. Like, he knows what he's not. And what I found particularly interesting was, I mean, now we have all this terminology about how to categorize people outside of a binary understanding of gender, but I don't think either of these characters can fit into one of these understandings. We can't apply our modern terminology to them because they can't articulate things in the way that we would understand. And I mean, I was reading the author's website and looking up the pronunciation guide and all of that, and so Shelley Parker Chan uses she and they as her pronouns. So I don't know what that means about her identity, and honestly, it's none of my business. But I do feel like because she's using the they pronouns, she is coming to this from a bit of an authentic, knowledgeable space that she's talking about them. And I know that on Twitter the other day, I've just been stalking her Twitter.
Just admit it, yeah.
I just want to know. I'm really interested in the process and what inspired her and how she approached things. And someone mentioned the other day that they were reading Ju as asexual, and she and Parker Chan responded that she didn't explicitly use that terminology in the text, but she did write the character that in many ways, and so she was like thrilled that someone saw themselves in that. So I mean, I came to this book as a cisgender woman who is very certain in my gender identity. So the concept of the fluidity that both of these characters show is not something I've experienced, but I think that it was portrayed very well in the book, in the sense that I understood that they could not be sorted into a box. And it was an evolving thing as well. Because, you know, Chu is a girl, and then she's not, and then she's very certain that she's not, and then by the end she sort of found peace with who she is. So another big reason why we can't just categorize them with our modern terminology is because their identities are changing and evolving, and they're evolving in ways that we don't necessarily understand. I need a drink of water.
That's very, very well done.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Very well.
I definitely got very strong androgynous vibes from Ju and from Shelley themselves. And so I think it was nice to see that represented in something that definitely has very defined male and female gender roles, especially during that period, and to explore what it potentially was to be a person of queer, either sexual or gender identity during that period, and how that would present. I found that like very interesting. The gender discussion as part of this book was definitely one that I was like the most interested in. I wanted to see a lot of that during the story. I was less interested in some of the political intrigue, but I was super keen to dive more into the gender stuff, and I'm interested to see how it plays out in the next book.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, something I also wanted to talk about was like how when Chu like offers to marry Ma, and then Ma, I don't remember if Ma actually realizes that, or like knows that Chu's actually like that Chu has a female body before or after they get married. I think it's before.
Oh no, I think she does before. She unbinds. She unbinds.
That's right.
Ma's getting upset that Chu is treating her like every other male.
Yeah, so then Chu's like, actually, I'm not like every other male.
That's right. No, sorry, I could not remember whether it was before or after they got married. And I was really intrigued by Ma and like her decision to go and marry Chu and like live her life with her. And I also, something that I also thought was really interesting was like when we shifted into different perspectives that wasn't Chu, they all refer to Chu with he, him pronouns.
Yeah.
And I thought it was like sometimes it didn't confuse me. Like I was actually it was really easy to just kind of stick with like those pronouns and understand like who they were talking about. But with when it came to Ma, like as soon as she realizes that Chu is a woman, like, that her body is a woman's, it immediately shifts to she, her pronouns. And the fact that Ma, like, who comes from a very traditional background, who was set to marry, what was his name again? That little shit that we were like, yeah.
Gal.
Okay.
Gal?
I think. I didn't actually. I checked the pronunciation guide, but not.
Yeah, there's only
apparently the audiobook pronounces things a bit weirdly.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. So don't always trust audiobook narrators' pronunciation.
Yeah.
But we will trust our friend who is a Chinese speaker.
Who speaks. Who speaks. So I was just saying that I thought it was really interesting that she, like, obviously, like, when she was like, you know, you can live outside of the future that you've been told that you have to have. Like, you can make your own future because that's what she's doing. She's making her own path. She's taking fate into her hands and, like, making it her own. So I really liked the fact that Ma was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm just going to throw it to the wind and just trust you and do this and marry her and refer to her as my husband and be like this. And I was like, you know what? I love you, Ma. MVP. Best.
I know. She's been dealt a very interesting hand in life, but although she's resented a lot of the roles that she's been put into, she always still went above and beyond what she necessarily needed to, like the way that she was treated by her to be betrothed, and she still cared so much. I just really loved her as a character. Like she could have been so bitter along the way, but she just took what she was given with a lot of grace, I think. So it was really nice to see an opportunity come along, to marry Chu and have a much better life where she's not going to be treated by a man in an awful way.
Like not just treated like a brood man, just like, have babies and have sons and that's it. Like, no, their life is very different.
I mean, that's not to say that her future won't have pain and suffering, like especially with some of Chu's choices at the end of the book. She's
I was going to say
still a lot of conflict there, but
she really goes through it at the end of the book. Ma really gets thrown something real whack, and she's like, and I'm like, me too.
Yeah, I was very intrigued by the choice to remove certain people to get to choose end goal. I know, but I'm still just like, it hurts. It hurts.
You just don't want to confront it. That's fair.
Exactly. I'm kind of in denial.
It was so. Yeah, because also, like, what was he called? He was called the Prince of Radiance.
This is why we needed. I think that was just his name. He didn't actually have a name.
Yeah, he didn't actually have a name. So, like,
the Prince of Radiance.
Like the Prince of Radiance. Like, I think throughout the book, by the way, like, this is something that someone brought up, was that, like, it didn't feel like a fantasy book. It definitely felt a lot more historical with some very light fantasy elements, and the Prince of Radiance was definitely one of those fantasy elements where like he was just like this other kind of being, but he was still a child. Like he was in the body of a child, or he was a child, like I can't exactly remember. And it was just really interesting, like towards the end when you realize that, oh no, Chu actually also has the mandate. Like she also can do what he does. And she just decides there can only be one. And I'm like, what? What do you mean there can only be one? And what do you mean there can only be one?
So quickly.
It happened so quickly.
I think that one of the big reasons why this is a 3-star read for me and not a 4-star read for me is that the ending is there's so much happening, and it's sort of a whole lot of things that have been slowly building up happen, but this is not one of those things. This felt a little abrupt to me, and I think it wasn't completely out of place in the novel, but what I really struggled with was when she essentially became the sun. I was surprised. It's the title, and I was still surprised. Like,
yeah. I think it was just such
there
a
was
bit
no
of a
build
shock.
up. Suddenly she was just
Yeah.
radiant.
Suddenly she was like, I am Radiance. I'm like, but what do you mean? I actually also, I don't know if Shelley Parker Chan has played Hollow Knight, but there is something called the Radiance in that game, which is the sun. And I'm just like, the parallel? No. I was like, have you played the game, Shelley? We need to talk. Yeah. I think
I mean,
it's been a bit longer to flesh that bit out.
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting direction for Chu's character to take, and I'm scared to see what it means for the future, but I think it was a good decision. But I think for the fact, like what I was saying before about how a lot of her choices, and she's just trying to survive and make it in the world, and then she's made some really big choices to get what she wants, and I don't know. On the one hand, I do wish I got a little bit more of that development into that mindset, but on the same time, I don't think the ending would have been quite so impactful if it wasn't a bit of a shock at the same time, if that makes sense.
I think it had
So
to
I don't
be
know how I feel.
You know, I get that.
Like I kind of liked the shock factor, especially when it came to her killing the child.
And like there were definitely seeds about that, like going back to the monastery. Like she demonstrates in that moment she is ready to kill for what she wants. Like
oh yeah, absolutely. But it's no longer a case. Like she could have done just fine with leaving the Prime Minister and the Radiant Child, the Prince of Radiance, alive. It was just She set her mind on something at that stage. There were definitely seeds, but I was like, it's a lot.
Like the seeds definitely planted very early, and something that I just remembered now was when she kills the governor, and that. Like so when she goes, so she does the landslide thing.
Yeah.
She does like the whole landslide thing, and then the Prime Minister is like, okay, so to prove that you can do this again, essentially. And instead of sieging, she's like, I'm gonna do a bit of strategic work and peace out the governor. But like at the same time, she was like, it goes against all of the teachings that she's doing as a monk, and since she's been she's a full monk now, it's I'm not allowed to take another life. Like I'm not allowed to kill a living thing. And the fact that she just
very true.
Like she definitely wars with it. Like she definitely wrestles with it and just goes, is this right? And then she's like, yeah, it is.
I'ma do it anyway.
I'ma do it anyway.
I'ma own it.
The most chaotic way. Like, oh.
Yeah.
I like that.
Good Lord.
Extra.
It definitely was a very unexpected avalanche of stuff right at the end. Like we saw the seeds of it building, and then it just hit a point and it was all on. It was all go time, and the pacing of the book hadn't really set that up to be expected and for you to be ready for that mental onslaught that we dealt with very rapidly. Definite content warnings for a lot of things.
Yeah, it was very much the kind of book that would have a long period of the political stuff and the tension and the planning, and then suddenly there'd be a landslide, and then more of the political tension and the planning, and then someone gets murdered, and then more of that, and then surprise fisting scene, and then more of that.
I was not on the train to work.
Maddie,
I was physically ow.
I'm like, babes, of course we're gonna bring it up.
All we've seen so far is one hesitant kiss, and then suddenly. Obviously,
Yeah,
they're not.
no,
Just
this book was not very sexually explicit until that bit, and I was like,
Until that one scene.
I know, because it also, like, I mean, there was a whole chapter in between different perspectives talking about war and stuff, and then
Mhm.
because like the scene before they were talking about finally getting intimate for the first time, but it fades to black, and then it starts mid fist, and I'm like, oh, okay, it came out of nowhere. 'Cause-
I'm just glad I was at home reading that, not like at work, or because I would have just been like, no.
Yeah.
it was really,
Just-
it was
I
something.
feel like Shelley set a precedent for how some scenes were described, how much detail it went into, and at the end, she really turned quite a few tables.
She turned up the dial. Just, let's go.
Yeah.
I'm done
Like,
holding
I've
back.
been too tame
Yeah.
trying to ratchet that up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good lord.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Yep.
I do think like it definitely was a scene that was very much like, okay, look, Ma and Chu have definitely like broken that barrier that was between them. That boundary doesn't exist anymore, and like Chu is starting to be more comfortable being touched, being more comfortable being intimate, and you know, I didn't expect her to have her wrist in, but you know, it's fine. That's all good. Go, you do you. No, you do you. It's great.
Look, as long as Ma's enjoying it, like, go
As
for
long as she's
gold,
enjoying
right?
it, as long as
Yep.
she's successful,
Yep.
that's all that matters.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Not here to
Okay.
yuck anyone's yum, but that was just a very
No yucking
suddenly
anyone's yum.
intenseness.
No. Yeah.
It's
What a way to start
unexpected.
a chapter. Oh yeah, it was good. It was
Yeah,
great.
it was an
excellent.
impactful opening scene. Yep.
Yep. Saucy. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I want to talk about
Okay, I've missed a few
Ouyang
comments.
and
Oh, you go.
oh yeah, you go. I was going to talk about Ouyang and
Oh no, I was just going to go back to
S-
comments here.
yeah, and Essen. Is it Essen? Essen.
Assume so.
Is that how you pronounce it? I didn't see any. Oh, is it in the pronunciation guide?
Oh, let me pull up the pronunciation guide.
Yes. But I tried to listen, but it's not coming through for me.
Yes, it's Essen. Essen.
I can't hear anything.
Essen. Yes. I was I yeah. Yeah. That whole I'm still not okay. Like I was well, you know what we mean, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
that was one of those things that there
That's-
were seeds planted really early on. Like we knew from the beginning that there was a conflict with Essen's father, and the fact that he'd caused, but then time went on, and I thought maybe he was just over it, and then he was not.
I just thought it was like
He played the long game.
he really played the long game, but also like just like because obviously like Ouyang's like it's very obvious throughout the entire book he he loves Essen, like he yearns for him, like it's very much a romantic love from him, but he's also like his entire family was massacred, like it was murdered by Essen's father, and like there's definitely moments where he while he does love Essen, like he did start as a slave. He did start as a slave, and he worked his way up into a position where, while him, like as a eunuch in this position, is mocked and he's humiliated quite a lot, he has a position of respect with Essen, but that's not enough. It's not enough. And while I suspected that it may take that direction where he just is like, revenge is all that is revenge is what I want. I didn't want it. I didn't want that. Like I didn't want it to happen, but I also was like, in a way, it was fate. In a way, it was fate. It had to happen. I just the way Essen the way he just was just like, no, I'm not fighting you.
I know. Oh, it was just such an interesting dynamic as well, because obviously knowing the history, but then there are a few moments as well where Yang is kind of like, he's just so privileged and ignorant of what I could be feeling. And he says a lot of things that really dig deep in a way that he doesn't, I don't know, just from ignorance. He thinks like Essen thinks he's being kind and flattering, but he's really saying something quite hurtful. So I think, like, I don't know, yeah, if he'd been a little more open-minded, maybe it might have been different, but I don't think so. I think
from his position, I would not have, don't think I would have been as open-minded. Don't think I would have been open-minded at all.
Yeah, I think there was the potential there for if Essen and Ouyang's relationship had been built in such a way that Ouyang maybe would have let part of that revenge go. But like the way that Essen kept commenting about how he's as beautiful as a woman when
that
was that was a choice that you made.
Choice.
So I feel like
there were definitely moments there where if he had said like something in a different way or recognized that Essen is still masculine, then we would have seen a very different final product for that storyline.
Yeah, because I feel like Essen kind of like just forced himself to forget about it in a way rather than more actively acknowledging what has happened and what that could mean for how Ouyang feels about himself and his identity. So I think that was probably a big part of why he couldn't let go of that part.
Yeah, the fact that Essen refused to confront how their relationship started, that it was not a pleasant.
You can't pretend it away, you know. Yeah.
And you can't forget it. Like it's like, you know, you can't forget that.
Oh, the moment that I realized that all of Ouyang's ghosts were his family and have been following him for years, I was like, oh.
Right.
Yeah. Because it didn't hit me for a while, and then I was like, oh, wait a second.
It's the last of the line. They've got no one else.
Who was it? Okay, there was somebody else. Oh, is it what's his name? The Essen's grandfather, the Great Khan or something? Can he see ghosts too? Because I think he looks behind Ouyang at one point when he like wins that match in the competition. He looks past Ouyang and is like, oh. So I think he can see the ghosts as well.
I think he could, yeah.
Because he's got the mandate. He probably has the mandate, hey?
Yeah. I think he does.
I think he starts
to develop it. But then why did you kill the little Prince of Radiance?
Yeah, I'm surprised that didn't come into it more. Because he was supposed to kill him. But then Essen's dad was like, oh, I'll show mercy for this one child. And it bites them all in the butt.
Yeah. Literally. Yeah. That was confusion.
This is sort of on the top of ghosts, but not so much the mandate. The scene at the end where Chu looks at the ghost, one of the ghosts that's been following her, and basically recognizes it as her brother.
Oh yeah.
That I thought was a very impactful, very powerful scene. It's definitely one of those ones that stuck in my mind, this idea that she took his identity, she took his destiny, and he's been forced, I guess, to follow her this whole time and sort of watch it happen, but she's not acknowledged him at all, and it's been literally years. That was quite interesting, I thought. I don't really know what word to use, because I think interesting doesn't quite cut it, because it's not like a fascinating thing, but it did.
Because it's a very small moment in terms of like space on the page, but it's like I think a pretty important thing that will probably come into the story again a bit later, because the rest, her mother could also.
Yeah, the rest of her family could show up.
Yeah, and I think because
which I think will be a tough thing for her to deal with.
Yeah, she
has
been
to actually
alone, essentially. Like she's been created this whole
perplexing. Yes,
word. Thank you for trying that, Tracy.
Tracy, perplexing. Good, I like that.
We appreciate.
maybe I'm not perplexed by it because I think it was a very important moment in her character development that because she sort of she stepped away from that life, she took her brother's identity and she created her own identity based on that. And once it's not until she comes to terms with who she is, not who she's fighting to be, essentially, that she acknowledges him, that she acknowledges where she's come from. So I think a lot of the significance in the moment, even though it's quite small, is that she's developed her character, her personality, her maturity has developed to the point where she's able to look back at the life, at the choices that led her to where she is. Whereas for a lot of the book, she doesn't actually acknowledge that. She just goes, no, this is who I am. This is who I have to be for survival. And once she accepts her sense of self, then she can look back. So I think that's a big part of the significance of that moment, and it is why it is so impactful.
I think it's a small moment that will have like huge impacts later on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think if there's anything.
Something that Maddie said in the comments was the way that Chu killed the moment that Chu killed the Prime Minister.
What?
What? Literally, I was like, okay.
I also wasn't sure if they were alone as well. I thought she did it in front of a big crowd of people at first, and I was like, Jesus, that's a choice. But it took a moment to realize that this probably wouldn't have been done right out in the open in front of a lot of people.
It's just was the Prime Minister the one she killed? So she went into the city to talk to the woman and told her you should take power. And the woman was like, if you kill this guy. No, that was someone else.
No, that was the governor. This is right at the end. So the Prime Minister was basically like using the Prince of Radiance for power. Like it's the Prime Minister and the Prince of Radiance who escaped the city that Ouyang was about to lay siege on again.
Yes. I remember now. I got their titles mixed up. The the moment where she went and killed the governor, though, that was
because that was the first time she, with her own hands, killed someone. Like the landslide, she didn't know there were 10,000 men trying to cross a river.
Yeah,
no.
That was not quite. Yeah.
I think I expected more internal conflict about it.
I agree. For that,
but it was more like she just popped over, killed him, popped back.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah,
I think we get a little more then.
Yeah, I think there was discussion in there about how everything that she does is going to cause suffering for her future lives, so she may as well make this life worth it. And I think that mentality meant that she was just like, not going to worry about it. That's
processing that.
This problem.
Yep, that's very true though.
Yes.
You can go, then we can. Yeah, I think it's worth a read. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely worth the read.
It's a good book. It is a solid book. Yeah. Just wish there was more in some areas. What were you going to say, Rochelle?
I really want to explore more of the connection between Zhu and Ouyang. Like, she instantly recognizes him at the monastery as someone that's going to have a huge role in her life. And and the fact that she can then go and do other things in the story, such as negotiate with him. Like, he's the one that cuts off her hand. Like, I want to know more about what that recognition is and whether, like, Ouyang is going to cotton on to something along those lines as well. Like, is he going to reciprocate at some point?
Well, because, I mean, he's, like, in the midst of his whole plan of revenge. So, I don't know.
He's busy, we get it.
Yep, he's got other things on his mind. But, that's definitely something to look out for. I'm very curious to see where that goes as well. I think this is a tricky book to describe in 3 words.
Didn't expect that.
Yeah, that's solid. That's a good one. Oh,
Yeah, it's not. I mean, we've just spent an hour sort of unpacking things about it. Not in it's. I mean, last month we spent the whole time just raving about how much we loved it and everything that we loved. This book is. It's not an instant. We loved it so much, and everyone should read it. It's a thinking book. You've got to think about it. You've got to really process a lot of what happens. And I think because most of us finished it yesterday, that's still where we're at. In many ways, we're still processing it. It's not the kind of book that you can just distill into an elevator pitch. I mean, maybe you can, but I don't think it would do it justice.
yeah, very true. And
Agreed.
why I think it's the type of book as well. Going back to what everyone was saying before, that a reread would definitely be on the cards. It'd be a very valuable book to read again.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, there's a lot.
It's very emotional.
It's hard hitting in a lot of ways, yeah. But exactly, that's the thing. Like he won't let go of it. He just cannot get past it.
Mm-hmm.
He's been through a lot.
Yeah. Rent free.
Yeah.
Yeah. Processing, thinking.
Processing.
A lot of time to, yeah. All right. Is there anything else that we wanted to chat about before wrapping up?
Just Ma in that final scene where she's like declares herself for Chu after finding out everything. I was just like, yes, my queen.
Like, I'm gonna be the empress.
On the basis of that scene alone, I really want a sequel because there's so much conflict, there's so much tension just between the two of them based around the decisions that they've both made. And I want to see them develop and unpack that. And
absolutely.
The main reason I want a sequel is that scene.
Yeah, because it's like Ma's not going to forget what Chu's done. So they're both willing to stick it out and do what needs to be done to keep that relationship going, but it's going to be hard work. You just know it.
Yeah.
It's a lot to accept or move past.
I'll be interested because at the moment, like, there's a lot of compromise on both sides. I'll be interested to see if there is a sequel, if we hit a point where one or both of them can no longer compromise and how that goes, what that turns out to be. Especially because there's now, like, Judah and Ma both know, but there's now a third person that knows that Chu has a female body. I'm interested to see because there's no way that little nugget's in there for funsies. Like,
and also I feel like with the lady, the lady that asks Chu to kill the governor, I know she doesn't know 100% for certain, but she does say it's because you're a woman too. So like, could that also? Because she seems very ambitious in her own right. And Chu kind of threatens her in line. Like,
that was one of the. I think that's one of the scenes that really stood out to me the most, in which Chu went, "No, I'm not a
Lady
woman."
Rui.
Lady
Rui. Yeah.
Rui.
Because she does say, "Well, you're a woman too," and there's this certain certainty to it, but it's all in the reaction. It's all in Chu's reaction to that. Where she's saying, no, absolutely not. That's one of the things I was thinking of when I was talking about gender before. How it's all a reaction. It's not an identification.
And like the way that she responds later in the book with the engineer, and how she's finally accepted it. And it's like, because I'm a woman, like I've been through all of this, you can't use this against me. Like you can tell anyone you want, it's not going to change anything. I'm going to get what I want. Like that's definitely, I think, very indicative of how much she's developed in terms of mentally accepting herself, her sense of self.
If you like this, you should read The Poppy War. No, it's different.
I definitely plan on it when I'm mentally a bit more prepared, I think.
Oh yeah, I love The Poppy War. It is a very different book to this one, but a lot of, I think, what appeals to people in this book is in the Poppy War as well. It's just you need to be in a very comfortable headspace and be prepared to just deal with some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like the Poppy War is that last 50 pages expanded over the entire book. So if you're not ready for
Yeah.
like heavy mental lifting,
Yeah,
just leave that for a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait a little bit.
but highly recommend.
Yeah,
What
highly
else can we recommend? What can we recommend in the opposite direction? What's cute and not?
Cute. What do I have? Oh my God.
There's, I don't know. So there's a book called I Believe in a Thing Called Love. It's a YA contemporary. It's by Maureen Gu, and it's based on K-dramas. It's
I
very
recommend
cute.
this.
Oh.
It's very cute.
If you like history and fantasy together, The Declaration of the Rights of Magicians by H.G. Parry. I'm reading at the moment and quite enjoying.
Oh, yay. Oh, there was another book that came on my radar that I meant to share with you, Els, but now I can't remember what it was.
Oh, you can remember later. I have
I
a box that came from Booktopia today on a Sunday. I haven't opened it yet. It's all academic texts. Probably not what anyone's after.
I was so excited. I was like, secret after party unboxing. And then you were like, academic.
Well, I can unbox it if you'd like. It's just, I've been waiting for this all week because I have work to do, because I have a thesis to write. And
Yeah, busy stuff.
And my... Oh, there's
What's
one here that's not for uni. Do you guys want to see what I bought my dad for Father's
I
Day?
splurged.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they're stunning. I love that whole. That trilogy is
Right?
amazing. I love it so
I
much.
was like, why not? I haven't read any of them yet, but I'm gonna, I think, do I marathon them all or do I space in between everything? That's the question.
I mean, they're definitely, I reread them quite a lot because they're just so
Mhm,
wholesome and so good. So, like, you can do it however you want. Depends on if you want a romantic or if you want to, like, just have some nice books to read in between some heavy ones.
I mean, I always have to read a lot of fantasy, so it's nice to break it up a little bit.
This dust jacket is a little dirty. Should I send an angry email? I don't know. This is my dad's Father's Day present. It's the 12
Oh,
lines
lovely.
of
Ooh, very nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
But it's like, it's got a dirty dust jacket.
I
Are we
just saw
talking about what
that.
we're reading next? So we're doing.
Got this one. This is academic. This is also academic. Oh, I was holding it
Nah.
upside down. It's called The Witch.
Yeah, I was like, it's upside down,
Ooh.
babe, but okay.
Hey! Because my thesis is about
Well,
witches. For anyone who
know.
didn't know.
Yeah.
Very exciting. I'll put them away
I
now.
love that.
I just recently saw the announcement of the Illumicrate special edition for Jade.
Jade City. Yeah.
Yes.
Greenbone Saga. Yeah.
It looks so
Mm.
pretty.
Jade Legacy will kill me. I feel like it's gonna murder me. Murder me. Kill me. Fondly, kill me, please.
We're ready. We are ready to suffer.
Ready.
Who owns a copy of the September
yes.
book?
Me.
Rochelle does.
I do
Rochelle,
not.
I have a copy of the third book in the series. I can hold that up, right?
So the September
We're not
book
reading
is my
this.
pick.
Reading that one.
Woohoo!
Rochelle's pick.
My
Woohoo.
pick. This one that I've had on my TBR for like 2 years. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna throw it at book club, and that'll make me read it.
Yeah.
He's the token. It's the
And I
token
think we
white,
just-
white man author.
Yeah.
Yep,
We
of the
discovered
year.
he was Australian as well, so that's
Me.
exciting.
Yeah.
There we go. Supporting
it,
local.
love it.
Really sick.
But yes, very
Yay.
excited to pick this one up.
Very excited.
Yes, yes. Yes, so that's what we'll be reading in September and reconvening the 25th, 26th of September to discuss in a live show.
Exciting times. Exciting times.
Yes. Well, I think that probably wraps up our live show, our discussion of She Who Became the Sun. Now it's being blurred out.
It's been blurred.
How dare.
Oh, my jumper match.
Ooh, love it. Beautiful.
I would rate
Would
it
recommend.
worth reading. So
Yeah, it
Definitely
is a
worth
good
reading.
book. Would recommend. And excited to see where it goes in the sequel whenever that's coming out. In a year or at least time.
I'm assuming a year. Yeah.
Yep.
Shelley, if you can
thank-
just release Shudar while we're waiting, that would be
Yep.
great.
Bandit
Novella.
series,
Love that.
please, and
Novella.
thank you.
Also, one shot
That'd be
novella.
wonderful.
Come on.
Whatever you're willing to give, we're willing to take.
Yep.
We're willing to take it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll take it.
So thank you all very much for joining us today for the live show. Hope you enjoyed the discussion, and we'll see you all in about a month for our next book club